I'll send it to you, and then we'll send it down there.
Ready?
Oh, yes.
Ready on the right?
10-4.
Ready on the left?
10-4.
Hey, come on. It's unfolded. Hang on a second.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm just going to pass this along. This is the sign up for the consultants. So pick a time and then
Sounds good.
decide. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regularly scheduled City Council meeting for July 19, 2022. My name is Mark Clark. I'm the mayor. I'll call this meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Parcel?
Here.
Councilmember Spear?
Here.
Councilmember Johnson?
Present.
Councilmember Neal?
Present.
Councilmember Mortensen?
Here.
Councilmember Providence?
Here.
All right. Next item on the agenda, audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience that is here to address City Council on any item that's not on the agenda or a public hearing? If so, please step forward to the podium. Seeing none, anybody virtually?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Next item, approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk, is there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
No, thank you. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, consent agenda. Item number 1, approval of the July 5th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes.
I move to approve the consent agenda. I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, new business. Item number 2, public hearing. Consideration of ordinance number 771-22, an application to annex a parcel of land into the city of Evans and to zone the parcel to planned unit development PUD for R1 and R2 residential uses. First reading, I will open the public hearing and we'll hear from staff.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of council. These next two agenda items, ordinance number 771-22 and ordinance number 772-22, deal with the issue that we were just discussing in the work session, the Liberty Draw development just south of 37th Street, west of 35th Avenue. Ordinance 771-22 is an application to annex a parcel into the to create the parcel for development and then to rezone it. And then 772-22 is a change of zoning request for the piece of the land that is already in Evans. So I'll turn this over to Community Development Director Ann Bess Johnson and our Management Analyst Curtis Cunningham to explain these ordinances further. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reedy and Mr. Clark, Mr. Mayor Clark, and members of City Council, and Bess Johnson, Community Development. And Curtis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Curtis Cunningham, Management Analyst.
All right, so as Mr. Reedy mentioned, we are hearing two cases are covered under this one presentation. There are 2 different agenda items, but rather than be redundant, we'll just talk about it all as a collective. So again, as Mr. Reedy indicated, there are several items happening at the same time. Within community development, these are the different processes that are happening and the different applications that are being reviewed. The Metro District review is happening concurrently, but it's just not being completely housed in ComDev. So note that the public hearing tonight is requested to be closed after public testimony and continued to August 1st. This will enable the applicant and staff to finalize the annexation agreement, and that annexation agreement then can be presented and public testimony can be heard on the annexation agreement on August 1st. And the annexation agreement and service plan will then have adequate time to be closely aligned. So going to the next slide, this is setting up the location. The area, the total area for this proposed development is outlined in red. The area here that is in unincorporated Weld County right now, and that is what is under consideration for annexation and zoning to PUD. This particular parcel right now is in Evans, and its zoning request is to zone it to PUD with R1 and R3 uses. Right now, the zoning up here, it's just cut, and it's very, there's a rigid block where the zoning is, but zoning it to PUD will allow some flexibility where to put the different densities of residential uses. So the location of the annexation and the zoning is happening through Ordinance 771-22, and the change of zone for the parcel on the west that's already in the city of Evans will happen through Ordinance 772-21. So on the future land use map with the master plan that you all recently adopted, the particular location is right here circled in black. And as you can see, it is in an area that the vision of the master plan indicated would be appropriate for urban density residential development. And that is what's being proposed. This happens to be a neighborhood development plan that was submitted as part of the preliminary plan. The act of annexation and zoning does not approve a land use application. It just sets the stage for setting up a land use application. They just happen to also provide this as a concept, and you saw it tonight during the work session as well. There will be 700 plus or minus residential units varying in sizes. There will be attached dwelling units and detached in various sizes, as well as lot sizes. So as standard with any annexation or change of zone, we like to put up this process diagram just so individuals that are in the audience that might not understand the city process and how we go through review, they can see this. We have a pre-application process, lots of meetings with staff, various different team members to provide design criteria, initial input on any variances to the design standards so that we have a good idea and a good working relationship before an application is even submitted. A lot of times we can kind of scrub through those sticking points at the time of the pre-annexation. Then the application is made, it goes through an completeness review period, then the public is noticed, referral agencies are solicited for their responses. Those will also include folks like Colorado Division of Wildlife, special districts, Weld County, and Councilwoman Spear, you indicated that it will be adjacent to an existing dairy. Weld County's response just asked if we could go ahead and put the right to farm covenant on the plats, as well as the right for mineral extraction on the plats, and those will be incorporated into the preliminary plan and the final plat as well. So just so that you're aware of that. Again, we have development review team meetings, and then the staff writes a report, sends that report out to the applicant and then staff meet to walk through that staff report and clarify anything that might be confusing in the report or how they need to proceed forward. Public notice, again, is required in section 1810.010. Surrounding property owner notice was provided on June 8th. It was also published in the Greeley Tribune starting on June 3rd and then for 4 weeks after that. The sign was posted on the property on June 8th. And then public hearings. Planning Commission can hear an application for a change of zone for property that's not currently in the city, but they make their recommendation to you all that should it be annexed, that they would concur or don't agree with the proposed annexation. Planning Commission did hear both change of zone requests at their regular meeting on the 28th of June. And Planning Commission minutes are in your packets, and they both indicated for both applications to send their recommendation for approval on the change of zone that's in the city, as well as a change of zone should you decide to annex the property. And so City Council, here we are on the 19th, and then it will also be on the 1st of August for the annexation agreement portion. And then for that second reading as necessary, then it will also be at that second meeting in August. So the annexation impact assessment. Mr. Cunningham is here, and he's going to talk a little bit about this. The city's prepared an annexation impact report. We reviewed the Colorado state statutes and found what is the minimum criteria, the minimum details that need to be in this annexation impact report. And Mr. Cunningham and I met, we talked about those minimum items. We created that annexation impact report, and then he's going to tell you where we're going to start taking it to that next level. So additional items that will be reviewed. So while those additional items are not a requirement of state statute, the city really wants to start analyzing this information. This was a suggestion of Mr. Reedy's, and we're really wanting to, push that forward so that the city can best understand what the impact of true development is on the city. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cunningham, and he will go through the next steps with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ms. Beth Johnson. So when we went into this, we started by talking to other municipalities to figure out what they do for their type of annexations for impact reports. My apologies. And what we noticed is a lot of municipalities that are closer to our size don't do past the minimum. So we had to kind of start from scratch or talk to a Fort Collins, talk to a Greeley, start to see what they're putting into their type of annexation impact reports to see how we can best give you guys the information that you guys need to make the decision. So with some of the stuff that we found for this, at least the initial one that we're doing right now, for the impact to city services include for the police. So initially what we did is we took the 700 homes that was talked about for how many are going to be in this development and multiplied it by the 2.9 people per household that's in the master plan. We got an additional 2,030 people that are going to reside in the city of Evans. So once this extra 2,030 people move to the city of Evans, it will require at least one additional police vehicle based off of their impact fee study to show, to make sure their level of service remains the same. Also, with the Parks and Recreation, we received information from Parks. We used 2019 data because we all know what happened in 2020. People couldn't really go anywhere. So some of the data that we looked at was active adult drop-ins that go to the rec center down the hall, the senior lunches that are provided annually, as well as the youth sports participants, just so we know what kind of staff will be needed in the future to determine the cost for the city. And then we also, I looked at the comparisons to other municipalities of our size in the National Recreations and Parks Association's 2022 agency review, just to see how we are comparing with the number of parks per 1,000 people, the dog parks per population, and things along those lines, just to make sure that we are staying on par with our peers or above them. When we look at the customer service and operations, we will see an impact to the number of building permits increase through this, in which we could see the people that deal with the building permits not be able to do their additional duties that they currently do for the city, as well as an increase in the utility processing. What we see currently with the 800 or 8,000 some homes that we were just speaking of, we could see that go up, as well as potentially the number of people that are going to be delinquent on their bills, which would require water shutoffs, which we currently do every month. Which then could pose an additional employee for upfront purposes, as well as a potential for increase in the municipal court. So more people could reside in more speeding, more traffic tickets, so we could see more people show up to the municipal court. Finally, looking at the impact fee discussion, this is a one-time fee, which I will get to on the next slide here momentarily, and it's not a source of revenue for city additional city employees or programs, so just to keep in mind. So this is a one-time fee based on the house. And then working within the different special districts in the city of Evans, we wanted to look at the library as well, just to inform them of a potential population increase for not only the card holders, the visitors, and the amount of checkouts that we're going to see inside the library building as well. So looking at the actual annexation impact assessment for the impact fees, based off of their the best of traffic impact study conducted by JR Engineering, where it stated that there would be 235 single-family detached dwellings as well as 471 townhome dwellings, which has been changed slightly from what we've heard earlier with the alleyway buildings. But I just wanted to look at the different impact fees based off of the 2022 fee schedule multiplied by the number of dwellings, just to give you guys a little insight onto what the impact fees the city of Evans will see.
Thank you. So the very last slide we have here this evening is just the criteria for approval. We don't have criteria for approval for an annexation in our code, nor a joint annexation zoning, but we do have criteria for approval in our code for zoning. So that's what we use for these combo applications. And again, this same presentation is for two different agenda items, so I don't have to repeat it the second time unless you want me to. So I'm not going to read, but I do want to enter into the record that the slide that you're seeing is based on section 1806040D of the land use code, and it lists the criteria for approval for a change of zone application. There will be an annexation agreement, a preliminary plan, a final plat, and a development agreement, as well as the Metro District Service Plan yet to come before you. Staff is requesting a continuance to August 1st after public testimony this evening has been received on the annexation and both change of zone applications. And then that continuance will again enable staff to finalize the annexation agreement and make sure that the agreement and the service plan are in alignment. So staff has found that this criteria for approval that's listed on this slide has been met. And in addition, in your packets are the Planning Commission findings from their meeting, and they also found that this criteria for approval has been met. If there's something that you'd like me to discuss in particular on this slide, I am happy to, but it is included in the staff agenda memo as well. So at this point in time, this does conclude staff's presentation. I know that before the applicant comes up and makes their presentation, Mr. Cunningham and I are available to answer any questions that you may have, and then the staff can make their presentation. Oh, sorry, they're not staff, we are. The applicant can make their presentation.
All right. Thank you. We'll go ahead and have the applicant do his presentation, and then we'll ask for public comment if there's any, and we'll move on to questions after that.
Good evening, Council. Mitchell Nelson, Entitlements Manager with Bessler Homes. Thank you for having us. And I'll start by just saying thank you to staff. We really enjoyed working with staff so far on this project. We think it's improving every day, and so looking forward to continuing that. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'm going to go through this pretty briefly. Ann did a really great job, and I think even through the work session with the feedback we received, we kind of understand the project, so I'll go through these pretty quickly. We did talk about location, and then Ann did a great job of explaining the annexation versus the rezoning of the property, so we can skip past that one. Just want to touch on the next slide very quickly about the density for the project. This came up during Planning Commission, so we are proposing a maximum density of seven dwelling units per acre in the PUD, which is a total amount of units of about 800. We're not intending to build that right now with the concept, but we wanted that flexibility to go up to that, but that would be the maximum proposed currently. This was mentioned before, but this does include single family, various sizes, alley loads, potential, and then townhomes, and those will all be fee simple owned lots, so at this time that's what we're proposing. And then we are working with staff to put the required number of creative neighborhood identity features, and with that you can go to the next slide. So this draft layout, we kind of talked about some of the amenities. There are multiple park areas throughout the subdivision, and you'll see more detailed preliminary plan, but this has multiple trail connections that adhere to the Trails Master Plan for the City of Evans. And I just want to note that we have now plan to resubmit the preliminary plan with some of that detail back to staff this Friday. And we've made some changes that we feel are beneficial to the community and to the city of Evans to this layout. And so staff will get the chance to look at that, and then you guys would see that with the preliminary plan process that Ann outlined. So I won't go into any more detail. I will just say that I think that the plan continues to improve with staff's input and cooperation. And so it'll be better when you guys see it next. Next slide, please. And this is just kind of a closing slide. The action tonight, as Ann mentioned, is more of the procedural annexation of the property. I think it's good that staff is looking at the impacts. Sounds like they've got a good handle on things. And so we are requesting approval of the ordinances associated with annexing and zoning the property. I believe that tonight would be a continuance, Ann, if I am correct, and then that action would come at a later date, but we are going to still request it and hear your guys' feedback, comments, and questions. And so with that, I can close my presentation and hear anything you guys have. Thank you.
All right, because this is a public hearing, is there anybody in the audience that's in favor of this? Seeing none. Anybody online? No. Is there anybody in the audience that is against this? Seeing none, and none online, I assume. All right. Is there any questions of staff or the applicant? Council?
I have none currently.
Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing, and I will, anybody have any comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Oh, Fred?
I would like to note that we already have a project in the works that has been presented as many projects, developer project have presented over the last 50 years. And they come in with a great presentation of what they're going to do. And then they either don't do it, or after it's approved, or they take and pass it on to someone else after 3 to 5 years, which is exactly what happened to Peakview. And it's still in the works. And I am wondering what the impact of having both of these, if they both start up at the same time, will be on our utilities, particularly wastewater. I think that'll do it for this part of it.
Right.
Other than that, I'm in favor of proceeding with annexation.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to continue first reading of ordinance number 771-22 to the August 1st, 2022 City Council meeting to allow completion of discussions with the developer on the details in the annexation agreement. I second.
I have a motion and a second to continue the first reading of ordinance number 771-22 to the August 1st, 2022 City Council meeting to allow completion of discussions with the developer on the details in the annexation agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda, public hearing, consideration of ordinance number 772-22, the change the zoning of 2 parcels within the city of Evans to plan unit development, PUD, for residential uses. First reading, I will open the public hearing and hear from staff.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, the presentation that you had on the previous agenda item is the same presentation that will be for this particular agenda item. The same criteria for approval is utilized when assessing, and Planning Commission at their June meeting did vote to send this to you for their approval. The same continuance is being requested so that all applications that are being reviewed under the same Metro District Service Plan, everything is aligned. So a continuance is being requested after closure of public testimony. I'm happy to walk through the presentation again if you'd like me to, but we can just let the record show that the presentation was given with the previous agenda item.
All right, thank you. And just because this is a public hearing, if there's anyone in the audience here in favor or against it, please step up to the podium And since there's also none online, I'm assuming there's not any questions or questions for staff, so I will close the public hearing if there's any comment. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion.
Comment to staff that I missed, I had it on a different page. I still believe that this 2.9 people per household is too low an estimate for planning purposes. I'm still seeing houses in our city with 6 or 7 or 8 cars parked in front of them, or on the grass. So I still believe that this number is just not correct for planning purposes.
Thank you, Councilmember Mayor. Any other additional comments, if any? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So we're continuing this one though, right?
Yes,
Right,
we're still gonna
okay.
do the motion. Yeah.
Okay. We're just continuing, we're not approving, right?
Correct.
Okay. I move to, should I say continue?
Continue.
Yeah.
Yep, continue ordinance, discussion of ordinance number 772-22 as presented for the change of zone request as proposed with conditions of approval and development standards, and to amend the official zoning map of the city of Evans to reflect the zoning classification as approved.
I second.
I have a motion, a second, to continue ordinance number 772-22 as presented for the change of zone request as proposed with conditions of approval and development standards, and to amend the official zoning map of the city of Evans to reflect the zoning classification as approved. All of those say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, item number 4, public hearing, consideration of ordinance number 774-22 to amend section 1806-060F of the Evans Municipal Code to revise the development standards for car washes in the city of Evans, and to amend section 1804-090 to allow car wash facilities in the 85 RCN and 85 RCR zone districts. First reading. I'll open the public hearing. We'll hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and members of council, as the title to this public hearing suggests, there's the reason for this ordinance 774-22 is twofold. It is, first of all, to modify the facility standards for car washes in the code, to modernize those in effect, and to bring those up to the state of the art and the state of car washes that we currently are seeing. And then secondly, to amend section 1804-090 to allow car washes as an allowed use in 2 of our Highway 85 RC zone districts. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff for further discussion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reedy. I have with me Justine Schoenbacher, and you know Justine. Ms. Schoenbacher is our water conservation coordinator, and she was instrumental in putting together the revisions to the code to reflect best practices after review of neighboring communities to make sure we are in alignment. And she's also developed the water conservation standards for car washes. So she is here to answer any questions that you may have, but there's no further presentation on this. So if you have any questions, we are available to answer those for you. And that concludes staff's report.
Great, thank you. Because this is a public hearing, if there's anybody in the audience that is in favor of this, please step forward. Anybody against this, please step forward as well. Seeing none, I'm assuming none online. Is there any questions for staff?
I have a question. Did staff look at any impact of a car wash on the sewer system? I know on this side of town that we have to pump all of our sewer back uphill. My concern, of course, is the effects of having a large car wash go into that system.
So as car washes, if you approve this ordinance, car washes would need to go through a special use permit process, and car washes are reviewed on a site-specific basis. So the impact to water, stormwater, water quality, sanitary sewer would be reviewed for that specific site. And any of those, improvements to the sanitary sewer that would be required by that particular proposal would have to be met with that particular site plan. But we didn't do just an overall city review of the sanitary sewer system and what would a car wash do to that sanitary sewer system. We look at it with site-specific development. So our wastewater department is a referral agency and participates fully in that referral process and also participates in the development review team meetings.
Any other additional questions? Councilmember Neal?
The language in red is the proposed changes to this ordinance?
Councilman Neal, you are correct. The language that's in red and underlined are the proposed changes. Language that's in strikeout is also proposed change to remove, but red and underline, add, strikeout, remove. Oh, and there was a confusing statement on page 2 under J, number 1. It was an incomplete sentence. And so it was brought to my attention by Assistant City Attorney Drew Lyman at about 4:30 today. And so I've made the change that can be added to your motion should you decide that you could approve this.
All right, okay. Is there any other additional questions for staff?
No, none.
Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and any comments for staff. If not, I would entertain a motion.
Do we need to request approval as amended?
I would, yeah.
Okay. I move to approve ordinance number 774-22 on first reading as amended.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 774-22 on first reading as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Can we get a roll call vote on that, please?
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castle,
Aye.
Councilmember Spear,
Nay.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal,
Nay.
Councilmember Mortensen,
Aye.
Councilmember Providence.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-2. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, item number 5, public hearing. Consideration of resolution number 18-2022 for a special use permit for Moffett Glass for a retail extensive permit, primary land use in the Highway 85 retail and commercial neighborhood 85-RC-N zone district. I will open the public hearing and hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and members of council, continuing in the Highway 85 retail and commercial zone. This is a proposal before you for a special use permit for Moffett Glass to go into this zone. This property is located west of and adjacent to West Service Road and north of 36th Street. And what you may recognize as the former site of the Great Outdoors RV dealer and service center. So with that, I'll turn it over to Community Development Director Ann Beth Johnson to further describe this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reedy and members of council, Mr. Mayor. So, what we have here again is a reuse of an existing facility, and that existing facility was not in compliance with the development and design standards. This opened an opportunity for the city to work with the applicant on a plan, which you'll see through their development agreement in another hearing or two, on phasing to bring that particular property into compliance with our development standards that are located in 18.8 of the Land Use Code. So the project site is south of 35th Street. east of Idaho Street, west of West Service Road, and just north of 36th Street. Again, it is a reuse of an existing property. Of course, things like building setbacks, we're not going to be able to change that, but we can change some of the design features such as the facade, signage if it's out of compliance, landscaping, parking materials. We can make those changes occur through time with the help of the new tenant or the new landowner that's coming in. So again, that development agreement will come before you in a few weeks. So this particular site, what they're doing is the uses that are contemplated for the operation of Moffett Glass consist of a combination of land uses that are in your packets, but the primary land use as an office is allowed through a site plan. Now this is where it gets, fun. Working in the land use code. So that's required, that a site plan is required for the office, and this is going to be their corporate headquarters in this area, and that is in the 85 RCN zone district. Now the use of retail use is extensive. That's a use allowed in that zone district through a special use permit process. So instead of requiring them to do a site plan for one use and a special use permit process, they're the same application requirements. It's just that special use permits come before Planning Commission and City Council. So we decided just to combine it all into one and bring it forth to you in City Council. There will be a warehousing and manufacturing component, and those are subordinate to those principal uses, again, that are listed in the land use code. Let's see here. All right, so you can see the site plan, or they're proposing the parking area will stay in this area. This is a potential future building expansion. The little addition right here is that existing office space, and that might be replaced at some time in the future. This is also parking and service area. And then the applicant has been working with engineering so that this particular site will drain off street just across from 36th to the drainage basin that's in that area. So I will now jump to the next slide, which is the future landscaping slide and improvements. So the following improvements, I'll just list them off for you, that are proposed that you will see in the development agreement in the next couple meetings. Will be ground cover, including improvements to the existing asphalt pavement on site, landscaping improvements for West Service Road, as reflected on this landscaping plan, landscaping improvements for 36th Street, landscaping improvements associated with the future paving of both 35th and Idaho Streets. Those will be made by the applicant in the future, and this commitment is going to be in that development agreement. The applicant will be required to provide a future landscaping plan to the city when one or both of those adjacent streets are improved by the city. It doesn't make sense to have them landscape those now when the road or any improvement or work in that area might disturb the landscaping. So the city has agreed that that can happen at the time of future paving of both those streets. There will be 6-foot fencing along 35th, 36th, and Idaho streets to screen the activities on site from nearby residential land uses and from all rights of way. The applicant has proposed a cedar privacy and a metal panel fencing with the second submittal, which we will, that will be included in the development agreement. Building facade improvements, including new paint colors and the addition of new materials, is being proposed, and that complies with the commercial building standards, development standards, as well as the US 85 overlay district development standards. So this one has the baseline development standards to meet, but then it also has the enhanced 85 district development standards to meet. And then again, this area may be an addition, a building addition. It's about 8,800 square feet that could come in the future. They wanted to go ahead and propose that now to have the calculations for the runoff due to additional impervious surfaces and work with the engineering on where to accept that runoff, so that if they do decide to make that change, they don't need, even though we've been a lot of fun to work with and everybody loves to do land use permitting, they don't need to come back and do that in the future, that it's taken care of now for the footprint. And with that, let's see here. Oh no. How could we not talk about the land use process for special use permits? And again, there's a pretty hefty pre-application process. The application submittal and review process, public notice, referral responses, development review team, and the staff comments. Again, public notice. So the city public notice, we only have to notify people when there's going to be a hearing, and it's 10 days before the hearing. But what staff likes to do is notice surrounding property owners when an application has been received. Because the last thing, it's not a benefit to the public to come to a hearing and work something out if they have a concern about an application. We'd much rather have the public come early on as soon as that application is received and work with the applicant and work with the city. So we did provide surrounding property owner notice in March on the 21st, as well as June 7th, advertising the hearing. To date, we've not heard from anyone, and that notice was sent out within 500 feet of the proposal. The notice was published in the Greeley Tribune on the 3rd of June. The sign was posted on March 31st. Planning Commission was held on June 28th. Planning Commission did hear this and moved to send their recommendation of approval on to you this evening, and those minutes are in your packet. And this is the last hearing for the land use, but you will have a meeting to talk about the development agreement, and we have drafted that. There's just some complexities due to that off-site drainage that engineering and the applicant are working through, just those final items. There are no hurdles, it's just the type of water quality item we're getting prices on, and to include that into the development agreement. So with that, I will conclude, and the last item then is that criteria for approval for a special use permit. Let the record show that this slide does show that it's in 1806-060 F5, the criteria for approval for a special use permit, the validation of how staff and planning commission found that these standards were met are in your packet. If you have specific questions to any of these criteria, staff is happy to address those this evening. But if not, rather than reading these and giving you the rationale for approval, I'll just let you ask questions if you have any questions. But at this time, I promise this concludes staff's presentation. I know the applicant is also here, and the future landowner and representative from Moffett is here, as well as their representative. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant if you have any questions.
Good evening. My name is Eric Warnsman. I'm with Warnsman Engineering and Land Development in Evans. As you know, Moffett Glass is looking to move their base of operations to Greeley. This is a great company with 33 employees now with potential to grow. Anna's been great to work with and did a good job. So if you have any further questions, I'll do my best, but I might need to get Eric up here also. So.
You're moving to Evans.
Yes.
You say Greeley.
I'm sorry. They're in Greeley now.
Yeah, I don't think you're really now.
We'd like to have you in Evans. So that was my question is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're going to do the public hearing comment first. All right. If, because this is a public hearing, if there's anybody in the audience that's in favor of this, please step forward. Anybody against? None online, I'm assuming. All right. Now we will open up questions for the applicant and or staff.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sure,
you guys can one of you can answer this. So this was the former Greater Outdoors Was that city-owned and now Moffitt's going to buy this property? Or was that privately owned and now Moffitt's still going to buy the property?
It's a private transaction.
Okay.
It's never part of the city ownership.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
You say you currently have 33 employees. What is your potential growth in about 10 years for a project like this?
Eric mentioned to me it might grow by 3 or 4. So up to 37, 38 employees.
And these are full-time jobs, you say?
Yes.
Is there, I was probably expecting a little more. It's within 10-year period, but I did do some research on your business, but that's fine. That's all the questions I got.
Councilmember Neal?
Yes, Ian, can you give me some specifics of what this property's out of compliance with currently?
Sure, Councilman Neal. It's out of compliance with the architectural standards of the US 85 district overlay. Color choice, architectural detail. It is a metal building. And so oftentimes in the 85 corridor and even in the industrial zone district, metal buildings are enhanced with, brick or metal wainscoting, other architectural details such as awnings. So it's out of compliance right now with the design standards, which require 1 tree and 5 shrubs for every 35 feet of frontage. And they selected a quad whammy where they are surrounded by 4 streets. So they have some landscaping to do. Of course, on Idaho Street, there isn't a lot of room to do the future landscaping, so they are at a disadvantage there. And the fence material is also currently out of compliance, and they are proposing to bring that into compliance. So it's mostly aesthetics and design that they're out of compliance with.
Any additional?
We're just doing questions, not comments right now.
Yeah, just questions.
Yes. I just had one more question for the city staff. When can Moffett expect for that road to be paved?
I would have to ask Mark Oberschmidt if he is still here.
He was trying to hide back there.
I tried. Oh no, we grill you over here.
Yeah, you're over there. Yeah.
That's the hot seat. Could be there for a little bit.
The short answer is I don't know.
Okay, that's not a good answer.
Yeah, I don't know. We're looking at serious inflation, and costs are going way up on a lot of projects. So as we get into the budget process for next year and the next couple of years, we're considering pushing some projects. So this one's not even on the list at the moment. So it is going to be on the list eventually. And we want to get it paved, but we also want to make sure we don't pave it before we look at everything underground and make sure that it's all in decent shape before we make it black and then we have to dig it up.
Okay, so that answers my question, and I will make a comment on that at the next section.
Any other additional questions?
I have none.
Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And any comments from?
I just asked that question specifically because if we're having a business come in and they're going to be expected to make landscaping and improvements on that, I also want to make it so that they have a good road and nice access, and they don't have to be taking their glass products over a bouncy dirt road, that we all know on our side of town that succumbs to a lot of holes and rough wear and tear. So I would like to see us come up with a timeline on when we can get that project going, especially if they are willing to come in and do that. For me, I'm not as concerned about having 3 trees and 5 shrubs and, a 1.5-inch river rock or whatever, as long as it looks aesthetically pleasing, as long as it's nice and clean and it's not a blight and an eyesore to the community. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, if we're requiring them to do landscaping, and again, I think in your report, you said that we weren't going to be as stringent until we do get the paving done on there. So I want it to look nice. I'm glad that they're choosing Evans. And I hope that we can work with their business and make them as welcome here with their business as possible.
Any other additional? Go ahead.
I've worked with Moffett. We've had to have them help us with windows that had hail damage or whatnot, and everything that they've done for us has been very good, very on the mark, just so you guys know, with their workers. I've personally been to their Greeley store because I had to take a window to them to get fixed. The inside was very neat, very clean, very well taken care of, well presented, and the outside of their property was very neat, very clean, very well presented. So just even from like a business standpoint, me going there as a business person, it was what I would like to see when I go to a vendor. So I understand they may not be able to grow to, like 500 employees, but the work they do is quality and the people they have are great. And I've had great interactions with all of them. So if that helps alleviate some of your thoughts too, maybe. But I'm happy to see them come to Evans from Greeley, because then I also don't have to drive as far when I need them. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys that little background of business wise. It's been everything a business should be.
Councilmember Neal?
Well, yes, I would like to see staff check out the utilities on that unpaved road and try to see what we can come up with, if we can get it, come up with funding, depending on how much work has to be done before it can be paved. I think that would be a good project to welcome this business with. I also am very familiar with Moffett from my days at Montford Packing a long time ago, and I certainly miss visiting with some of the staff in there. It's been quite a while since I've been down there, since they dropped their paint line and to concentrate on the glass part. But I think they'll be an outstanding addition to the Highway 85 corridor. I really am looking forward to the ribbon cutting.
Any other additional?
I agree with what was said. If we can look into what it would look like to pave the road, and I'm excited to have a company come into Evans, and especially as mentioned in the 85 corridor. I think we definitely need businesses with great aesthetic, a great reputation that's there to definitely help us, elevate that area.
Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you very much for doing business in Evans. We really appreciate it, and we really are glad to have you here, be a part of our community. I know you guys have been in business for over 30 years, so it's fantastic that you've chosen Evans to, expand your business and continue. So thank you very much. And I do agree with the other comments that were made by the other council members. I would like to look at something in our code to where we can maybe make some modifications to the landscaping. Again, as Councilmember Spear said, I'm not worried about the trees. I'm not worried about the shrubs. I'm not worried about, as long as it looks aesthetically pleasing. I mean, even if it means xeriscaping, whatever. We need to look at maybe making some changes to allow a little bit more landscape opportunities where it's just not always trees, shrubs, grass, etc. So,
may I address? So members of council and Mayor Clark, yes, we are in the process of updating our land use code. Right now, staff can't make any changes because you have said, this is the code, this is how we want the city to develop. So we have to follow those guidelines. If there's an emergent issue that needs to change, we will bring those to you. But we're right in the process of updating our land use code, and we will be looking at that over the next 18 months. And water conservation, as you know, is a very important component to the master plan, and that will be carried forward into the land use code. So I want to assure you that yes, while staff may agree to a lot of things that are different than what the land use code offers, that's what we have to abide by.
Yep. Great. Well, thank you. If there's not any additional comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move.
Oh.
My side of town.
Yes.
I move to approve of resolution number 18/2022 as proposed with conditions of approval and development standards.
I second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 18-2022 as proposed with conditions of approval and development standards. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. All right, next item on the agenda, consideration of resolution number 23-2022 regarding petition for annexation filed by Jose Alarano for 1.18 acres of land located west and adjacent to the West Service Road and south of the intersection of Brantner Road and West Service Road, and setting a public hearing date to consider annexation and change of zone. We'll hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor, members, council, staying with the theme of the Highway 85 zone, we're moving south now, just north of the river. This is a parcel of about 1.18 acres located west of and adjacent to West Service Road and south of the intersection road there, or intersection of Brantner Road and West Service Road. So it's again on the west side of the highway. This is a petition for annexation filed by Jose Arellano to bring this property into the city of Evans and for you to consider the annexation and a change of zone. I'll turn it over to Community Development Director Ann Bess Johnson to further describe this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reedy, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The request before you tonight is to establish if there's an interest in annexing and then zoning a particular property into the city of Evans and then setting public hearing dates if an interest exists. The applicant did request that the 2 council public hearings, should you decide you want to do this or consider this, regarding the annexation and change of zone be held on September 20th and October 4th. So moving forward, as Mr. Reedy indicated and as it was read into the record, the location is right here. It is one of the first properties you notice as you're coming into Evans over the bridge after you pass through LaSalle. It's on the west side of US 85. It's a funky shaped parcel that you'll see on the next slide that's actually triangular. So the tip of the property is at the intersection of Brantner and West Service Road. Brantner then runs down the west. West Service Road is on the east. There is the trail that is the 10-foot wide sidewalk that's in that area. There's quite a bit going on this particular property. It is currently in, he's working with Weld County zoning compliance to make sure that the property is in compliance. His other properties have also gotten to know our neighborhood services department quite well, and he has really done a good job at cleaning up some of his property. And so it is a historic use. There are some historic structures on site as well that he wants to fix up and make some improvements to. So going on to the next slide. Again, it's kind of like a sandwich. So the northern parcel is right here. These parcels are in the city, and then the southern parcels are right here. And so the acreage is under 2 acres. It's about 1.8 that's coming into the city or is being requested to come into the city. And then in addition to the annexation and zoning, should you decide that there is an interest, he will be also submitting a boundary line adjustment to vacate lot lines and then doing a special use permit on top as one unit. And that special use permit will be for auto sales, which is a use that's allowed in this particular zone district, and potential auto repair. Right now, that's not allowed in the zone district, but you might see some code requests come before you. So again, section 1806030 provides a process to consider the current annexation zoning changes, and we follow the zoning requirements. So for an annexation petition procedure, this is from Colorado Revised State Statute. But the first thing is to determine that the petition substantially complies with Colorado Revised Statute and those requirements. Determine that it does, that there is an interest. We have to set a hearing date within a certain period of time. And then they have requested, though, hearing dates a little bit farther. But because the applicant requested that, then we have the opportunity to honor that request. You can determine that the petitions do not substantially comply. You can determine that they do comply and set a hearing date, or you could table the annexation petition for up to a period of time not to exceed 180 days. So the main requirements are contiguity, and of course the parcels are surrounded by the city of Evans, so there is no question that contiguity doesn't exist. So it does exist. That there is an interest that exists. Again, this is a highly visible parcel, and if we have the opportunity to work with the property owner to make improvements, this Mr. Ariano has actually been working with staff for over a year to talk about the future use of the property, the improvements that he wants to make, wanting to make a reinvestment in his properties and making sure that, while community development and engineering staff cannot guarantee an outcome, to let him know that we offer a transparent land use process, that he's guaranteed of due process. But we cannot guarantee him the end outcome, but we can guarantee that due process. So with that, I will close my presentation. I do have an email that I can enter in the public record if you are wanting me to do so. It is from Mr. Ariano's representative at Ag Professionals. They have indicated that they do not have a representative available for tonight's City Council hearing for the Ariano annexation petition. We are in agreement with the public hearing schedule previously discussed and don't have any further comments at this time. So if this needs to be entered into record, I'm happy to do so, but that's why they're not here.
Great. Any questions of staff?
I do.
Go ahead.
So my first question, this is strictly about the annexation, correct? Not any type of land use, anything like that, right?
That is correct. Any future land use development agreement would, depending on that land use, would need to come back before you.
Okay.
So this is just annexation zoning.
And then just one more general question. You had mentioned getting to know code enforcement. Has that been amicable when things have had to be addressed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Mayor, also you had your hand up.
Yes, is the email you have, is that from associated with Tom Hamlin?
No, it is not.
Has he disassociated himself from, or has Mr. Ariano disassociated himself from Tom Hamlin's involvement in this?
I don't know the personal relationship between Mr. Hamlin and Mr. Ariano, but the application has been presented that Mr. Ariano owns all the properties and that he is the applicant, and title work has been submitted with the application. Until there is an establishment that there is an interest to annex this parcel, staff really isn't going in and looking in the title work and all of that until we know that there is an interest.
Mr. Mayor, if I might comment, the only issue that's before the council this evening is to set the hearing for what's called the eligibility hearing. So you're not really making any decisions about the annexation at all tonight. You're just saying that we'll set the hearing for between 30 to 60 days, and in this case, just a little bit more. And then at that time, you'll discuss whether the city wants to actually annex the property and whether the zoning that's being recommended is appropriate.
All right, great, thank you. Any other additional questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 23-2022 as proposed and establish the hearing date to be September 20th, 2022.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve resolution number 23-2022 as proposed and establish the hearing date to be September 20th, 2022. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, item number 7, the shortest one out of them all. Public hearing, consideration of a continuance request for resolution number 19-2022, bunting disposal special use permit. I will open the public hearing and hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor, Mr. and members of council, this is one last item that's in the US 85 zone. This is a continuance request for resolution number 19-2022, bunting disposal special use permit. At the request of the applicant, they're requesting this be continued to September 20th, 2022.
Okay. And because this is a public hearing, if there's anybody in the audience for or against it, or mine, seeing none. Any questions from staff? No? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the applicant's request for a continuance of the public hearing to consider resolution number 19-2022 to be heard by City Council on September 20th, 2022.
I second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the applicant's request for a continuance of the public hearing to consider resolution number 19-2022 to be heard by the City Council on September 20th, 2022. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda, reports, City Manager.
Thank you. I have no report this evening in the interest of moving on to your executive session.
City Attorney.
I'll follow suit.
All right, great. Next item on the agenda, audience participation. Is anybody in the audience that wishes to address City Council on any item? So there's none online. Next item, I'd entertain a motion for executive session.
I move to go into executive session to determine the city's position and to instruct negotiators on matters that are subject to negotiation in connection with the proposed Liberty Draw annexation and Metropolitan District pursuant to CRS section 24-6-402, subsection 4D.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes, and we will go into executive session. Everybody all right? Anybody need a quick break?
I'm go.
Good. All right.
Yeah, please.
Boy, all these were like.